Well, there are a lot of models for both codes of conduct and codes of ethics, so it depends a little bit on the model that you're using, but ultimately they should be mutually reinforcing documents. So a code of conduct, whatever model you're choosing to use, says in one way or another what are the behaviors that are going to be required in this organization. So what's going to keep us compliant with both our internal policies and procedures and the external mandates. Code of ethics, on the other hand, again, regardless of the model that you use for it, is going to say in the course of being adherent to our code of conduct, what are we going to aspire to in terms of the kinds of decisions that we make, the kind of values that we aspire to show, and as importantly, how are we going to decide what to do if there's not guidance given to us from our code of conduct or our policies and procedures. I think it's incredibly important for organizations to have both, and frankly, ideally 3 documents. I can talk about that in a moment. I think the more, there's 2 reasons really. The first one is that the more you can delineate what is a compliance-oriented document, such as a code of conduct, and what is ethics-oriented, such as a code of ethics, I think the easier it is for employees individually and organizations as a whole to keep in mind that as related as they are, they're different things. The second reason, which is really quite different, but I think equally compelling, maybe even more compelling, goes back to the absolute bare basics of learning principles, which is that if you have 2 or 3 brief documents written in plain, understandable language, it's going to be much, much easier for employees to both read and understand and therefore retain and therefore apply those documents. So even if theoretically you could reasonably combine a code of conduct and a code of ethics, I just think it makes a ton more sense to break them out into 2 more documents because they're going to be, or into 2 separate documents, I should say, because they're going to be much more functional. The third document I mentioned that I recommend is having a value statement. So I think ideally if you can have a code of conduct that is brief and concise and easily understood, an ethics code that is brief and concise and easily understood, and a value statement that is brief and concise and easily understood, and clearly spells out the behaviors required of each employee to bring an organization's core values to life. You have actually 3 documents that are where the whole is dramatically greater than the sum of the parts, again, because they're more easily understood, more easily retained, more easily applied.